Welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane Kay. Today I'm breaking down the newest episode of Grey's Anatomy, Season 18, Episode 13, Put the Squeeze on Me. It was a good episode, and nothing will ever be the Greys of the Magic days, but this is closer than what we've seen in later seasons, and I enjoyed this episode as well as the last couple of episodes too. Suddenly, everyone is mentioning Joe's bar all of a sudden, so I'm hoping for nostalgia's sake, Joe the bar owner will make an appearance. I loved when O'Malley got Joe the heart surgery covered, and I love the Thanksgiving episode with Walter and Joe, or the episode where Walter and Joe joined Derek and Richard and George and Alex to Derek's chagrin. When they went on the camping trip. I love that episode. And I remember Richard Weber wanted to share Joe and Walter's tent. He wasn't understanding the situation there. Anyways, some comments on today's episode. I think that Link will start pining after Joe, and Joe will be into this patient's brother a lot, I think. And I suspect the Levi story will take darker twists and turns. And I'm also a little bit worried about Weber. I don't think anything is actually wrong with his health, but I mean, it's possible. But I'm hoping that they don't take Weber's character out of Grey's. If they take Weber away, I mean, he's part of the heart of the show. I mean, that will be so sad for the show. I don't think they should take him away. I mean, the show is already going to have a season 19. I don't know if it'll have a season 20 as well, but I would like to see Weber there till the end, and I don't want to watch his decline. They keep including Levi in the storyline in tiny little bits, so I think he'll be coming back into play. Also, I feel as though Bailey's fanboy Dr. Wright and Bailey do have a spark, and I know Bailey isn't interested, but I do think something is going to happen with them. And I think Richard might be doubting himself, but I'm hoping that he'll be fine and there's nothing medically wrong with him. I really don't want to watch the decline of the great Dr. Richard Weber. Not yet. Actually, not at all. But preferably not yet. As far as Dr. Grey, I guess Nick will be Mare's permanent man. I don't know. It just seems so similar to Derek, and I don't know. I'm not feeling it. I would have preferred that they go in another direction. I think this is super vanilla, but I guess it works. So let's get into this episode. Season 18, Episode 13, Put the Squeeze on Me. It was paced pretty well. I didn't find myself perusing the internet or bored pushing to get through the episode. Lately, Grace has been much better than it was. The episode opens with Bailey taking care of Atiki, the late firefighter Dean's daughter, and Dean's parents have agreed to end the custody battle. Ben takes a jab at Dr. Wright, Bailey's fanboy who tried to kiss her, and he teases Bailey over it, and he refers to Dr. Wright as Dr. Romeo. We find out that Dr. Richard Weber has been calling Levi each morning, and he leaves him voicemails to call back to no avail, and Weber intends to keep calling till Levi goes back to work or until he answers his phone. Richard asks his wife, Catherine Fox, if she thinks he should give up on Levi, and she thinks not everyone is cut out to be a doctor and not everyone is cut out to be in the OR. Farouk is encouraging Owen to continue his rehab and all the exercising and stretching that he's supposed to be doing. And Farouk, who has just recovered from the heart transplant at age 14, expects that if he can do it, his uncle can do it too, and his uncle can try just as hard. Farouk is packing, and Megan, Owen's sister, tells him not to slack on therapy. Owen complains he has 2 broken bones, and she responds in the same leg. Owen says he also had the spine injury as well. Megan says Farouk had open heart surgery. Farouk says it's not a competition. Owen says it absolutely is, and Megan says always. There's always that competition between Megan and Owen as siblings. Megan turned Hunt's dining room into a gym so he can do weight-bearing exercises in order to walk again. Megan hands Owen crutches and she demands 20 leg raises. Owen says he did those an hour ago, and she says, congratulations, now 20 more. Meredith goes over her surgery with Dr. Thomas to the staff at the Cleveland Clinic, and he is healing wonderfully. His hands don't shake anymore, and the Cleveland Clinic offers Meredith a permanent position as director of the Gray Center and chief of general surgery as well. Dr. Thomas does this in front of the whole staff, putting Meredith on the spot. Back in Seattle, Amelia is friendly to Link, mentioning some of the preschool options for their son, Scout, and Link is kind of short with her. She's trying to explain some of the school options, and he says he has a patient waiting. Dr. Wright, Billy's lover boy, is her resident today. He apologizes, and she tells him there is no need for him to keep apologizing for the incident, for the kiss. And he explains, no, he was apologizing for being late. He is on her service. In walks a man screaming for help from the ambulance bay area. He explains that his partner needs help. He's hurt in the car with Gigi. He says he's warned him about something like this happening. He knew something like this would happen, and he knew letting Gigi live with them was a bad idea. And Billy asks, is Gigi hurt too? Is she a family member? The man answers, he treats her like one. He leads Billy and Wright to his SUV, and inside is a man with a huge Burmese python, Gigi, wrapped around his torso, clenched with his teeth clenched down on his arm. It kind of reminds me of old Grays. They even use some of the old style transition music to give that nostalgic vibe. Back at the Cleveland clinic, Nick says he didn't know that job offer was coming, but Meredith had to know her project was wildly successful after all. Meredith says she's not even done with the Parkinson's research, and Nick says it doesn't matter. Now they want to see what else Meredith can do. Meredith asks, what if I just want to go home and be with my kids? And Nick says she should. She doesn't have to do every project herself. She can hire a great team and use strategic direction and still have her name on the door. Dr. Hamilton walks in and Meredith asks what could possibly have made him think that she would respond well to him springing this job offer on her in front of a staff she does not even know. Hamilton says maybe she will respond well to this, and he hands Meredith a paper with her salary written on it and the hospital budget for the Gray Center. He apologizes about Meredith feeling ambushed, but the financials just got approved that morning and he was very excited about it, so he may have jumped the gun. And he tells Meredith she can pick what work they do with the budget, and she can take the work they've already done and run with it, focusing on whatever she likes, like Huntington's disease, ALS, Alzheimer's, whatever she wants. And Dr. Marsh will benefit too, so it's win-win. Back at Grace Sloan Memorial, Billy calls Helm and Weber outside, and Weber thinks it's bizarre to be called outside to the parking lot. He has no clue yet what's in store. A nurse screams as she walks back through the double doors of the ambulance bay as Weber and Helm are walking out. And then we see a handful of people gawking, standing around looking into the SUV. Billy and Helm push past, and Helm is terrified and she backs away. Billy explains to Weber the patient is a 32-year-old male with a bite to the upper left arm with a constricting injury, and that the patient complains of pain to the arm, chest, and abdomen. He says he ate questionable pineapple that morning, so the pain could be from that, and Weber says he's guessing not. Ivan's partner yells, "You people better get that snake off of him!" And Ivan tells his partner that he loves it when he gets fired up, but he's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine because Gigi the snake is just giving him a hug. And his partner says, "No, Gigi is killing you." The patient turns to Weber and he says, "Burmese pythons are docile, with the huge snake wrapped fully around him, biting his arm." Billy tells him his situation suggests otherwise. He says he teaches second grade and his class was studying reptiles, so he thought a class pet would be engaging for the students. When he got Gigi, the snake was only a few feet long and she kept growing, so he eventually brought her home. The partner says that she grew because the teacher kept feeding her too much. Ivan says he swears that Gigi has never done this ever before. When he went to feed Gigi this morning, she bit his arm instead of the food. And once they bite, they don't let go. And as he says that, the snake coils even tighter around him. Now, Ivan can't feel his hand and he asks Weber and Billy, "Is that bad?" And his partner says yes. And he explains that his partner has eyes on the back of his head for his students, but Gigi the snake is just one slithering blind spot. The guy's O2 is dropping, so Weber wants neuro and ortho paged, and Billy says, "Page everyone." And she asks, "Where's animal control?" Link is browsing preschools in the hall as Joe notices, and he asks Joe if she has a plan for Luna, and her plan is to see what Link does and just copy him with Luna. Joe tells Link that she misses him, and he misses her as well. And Link says he blames Amelia for what happened between he and Joe asks, "How is that Amelia's fault?" And Link says because he's decided everything is Amelia's fault. He says she has found a way to ruin every good thing in his life. Joe says they aren't ruined. They're best friends who are smart enough to protect their friendship. Link says fine, but Amelia still has ruined most good things. And Joe says she thinks she likes Petty Link. And Link asks, Petty? Link says, I'm petty now? Great. She turned me into my father. Blame her for that, too. Joe says his father got back together with his mother, and Link tells Joe she's not helping. He gets Paige to the parking lot, and he also thinks it's odd. Helm gets Dr. Pierce and Dr. Ndugu about the snake situation. Maggie isn't fond of snakes, but we learn that Dr. Ndugu is a huge fan, and as a kid, he always wanted a snake. He's totally stoked about this. He's very enthusiastic, and he eagerly follows Helm outside. And Maggie stays back, and she says, who are you? The teacher loves Gigi, even though Gigi is dangerously close to ending him. It's insane. And the partner says he knows that he loves Gigi, but Gigi sees him as food. And one doctor asks how they're supposed to examine him. And the partner answers by chopping Gigi's head off. Dr. Ndugu says pythons can swallow their prey whole. And he tells the teacher Ivan to relax because every time he breathes, the snake will just tighten and coil around him even harder. Dr. Ndugu says they will need rubbing alcohol, and Richard shouts for Helm to get some, and she is hiding behind the emergency exit doors, behind the actual glass doors, watching from afar. There's a 34-year-old pregnant mitral valve patient, Laura, and her brother Todd is accompanying her, and he is very supportive of his sister, and he knows all about her symptoms. Todd is a PhD in environmental science. Farouk and Megan are leaving, and Megan gives Teddy Owen's PT routine. Owen says he doesn't need oversight, and she tells Owen to let people help him. He can't be the only hero, even if he's her hero. Megan has Farouk take the bags to the car, and she tells Owen and Teddy that she was giving them a pass, but she knows something's up between them and they need to fix it. Dr. Ndugu says the rubbing alcohol sprayed on the snake's mouth will cause irritation so Gigi can unclench her jaw. Wright, Lincoln, and Dr. Ndugu will lift and uncoil the snake, and Weber is supposed to be the one spraying the alcohol. Weber is afraid he has the bottle in his hand, and he hesitates with the spray bottle of alcohol, so Bailey grabs it and takes charge. The snake unclenched and lunged at Bailey, but Dr. Wright pulled her back. Dr. Ndugu, Link, and Wright got the snake off of the patient and got the patient on the stretcher. They shut the snake in the car successfully, thankfully. Lori decided to get pregnant alone, and her whole family was against it. Her parents worried about her heart. Her friends worried about her raising a baby alone. Her whole family was against her getting pregnant and having a baby by herself. But she decided that she wanted to do this, and Todd, her brother, decided to make a spreadsheet. He's a numbers guy, and he helped her throughout her pregnancy, and he has gone to all of Lori's appointments. He even lets Lori stay in the vacant part of his duplex for free as she recovers because of her mitral heart condition. And he wants her to be very happy and successful as a mom as well. He's a very sweet and engaged, involved brother. Joe explains to Lori that she's a single mom too. And Lori tells her that she seems kind and healthy and well-adjusted, and she's a doctor. And she asks if Joe is open to dating if the person liked kids. And Joe tells her hospital policy prohibits doctors from dating patients. And the patient explains that she meant Todd, her brother. And Todd is struggling to plug in his charger, and Joe sees that, so she moves the table so he has more room. If he's such a smart environmental scientist, why could he not deduce that there wasn't enough room between the table and the plug, and it's just a small side table, and it would be just very quick to move to be able to plug in the charger rather than extend yourself, stretch all the way back, and try to squeeze your arm in there? It seemed really stupid to me. Anyways, Todd wants to stay till his sister is done, and he and Joe watch the same show, Ready, Set, Globe, which is supposed to be akin to The Amazing Race, I'm assuming. And Joe lets him know that the second floor vending machine has awesome salt and vinegar chips because he mentions forgetting chips. Billy tells Ivan that he may have damage to his lungs because his oxygen level isn't ideal. Ivan asks Billy to tell his partner to take care of Gigi, that Clark, his partner, should make sure that Gigi is fed, and he says that if she isn't fed, then she gets testy when she's hungry. And Dr. Wright says clearly. Bailey reassures Ivan that they'll pass on the message. They check the lung films, and Weber sees opacity, and he tells Helm that they'll need to put in a chest tube, and Bailey says she sees some airflow left, and she sees a little bit of fluid, and she insists that first Ivan will need a CT scan. Dr. Ndugu says that pythons still act hungry after they are fed, so their owners will typically feed them more and more, and then they run the risk of becoming obese. It's a pretty common problem. Weber says the whole hospital is talking about how Bailey tamed the snake like Indiana Jones, and Bailey says, but Indiana Jones was afraid of snakes. Up come Ivan's scans, and the pressure from the snake coiling around him ruptured Ivan's diaphragm, and all of his abdominal organs have herniated into the chest cavity. So if they had intubated him as Weber wanted to, the intubation would have gone through his liver or bowel, and it would probably have resulted in killing him. Maggie says that she was hit on by an 18-year-old patient when she was 26. And if it's the guy when she started at Grace Sloan who was 18 and a class chaperone on a field trip, he wasn't exactly her patient. That class was there for a field trip, but maybe she's referring to someone else. But occasionally the writers will be very lazy, or they're new writers who don't know all of the seasons, and there will be plot holes or things that they missed or things they got wrong. And one example in this episode, they refer to the patient. Joe calls her Laura, but in the beginning of the episode, they're calling her Lori. So I'm going to call her between Laura and Lori. I don't know what her name is supposed to be, but I noticed in the beginning of the episode, they call her Lori. And then Joe calls her Laura, I'm pretty sure accidentally, and no one caught it probably on set. But anyway, Lori starts coding during the surgery, so they reposition her, and thankfully everything resolves. Dr. Wright asks if Dr. Ndugu had a mentor during his residency, and he says she was a genius who was also hot, and he was smitten with her, and he chose his specialty because of her, and he's talking about his now wife, Maggie Pierce. Dr. Wright asks Dr. Ndugu if he got over it, and he says no, he married her. As Helm and Dr. Wright and Bailey and Dr. Ndugu are operating on Ivan, they notice that the colon looks dusky, and Weber lets them know animal control arrived, and they're deciding how to handle Gigi the snake. Ivan's blood pressure starts dropping, and Bailey tells them to hang blood. Back at Owen's, Owen is doing his leg exercises, and he's in pain, and Teddy tells him to do 8 more. Owen says, just because Megan wrote down those numbers of repetitions and the exercises, it doesn't make it necessary, and she isn't his doctor. Teddy tells Owen that PT improves mobility and it helps post-surgical complications. Owen tells Teddy that he doesn't need to have her sell him on PT. He knows how important it is. Teddy tells him to keep going then, and Owen says he needs a break. Teddy tells him to take a break after all of his repetitions and exercises are over. She says he won't be able to walk or operate if he doesn't push himself. She tells Owen not to hold back. Here's the thing, from my experience, if you ever have had any type of surgery or injury on your leg or hip or thigh or anything like that, and you're healing and you need to do a bunch of rehab and recovery, and you have to do a lot of PT, it hurts a lot and it can be very physically painful, and it also takes an emotional toll pushing yourself as well and pushing your body. And sometimes you push your body very hard and it's very physically painful, and you just need a minute. And things that used to be easy, like getting a glass of water, going to the bathroom, getting dressed, whatever, simple things that you take for granted that you do every day, are more difficult, and it's a lot harder. So sometimes simple things become a chore, and it's hard. It feels almost like you're pushing up a boulder uphill. So it's good to push and encourage and be supportive. But if the person that's in pain needs a break and you don't know their pain level or their emotional toll, just give them a second. Assuming that they aren't giving it their all or they're holding back is not going to help the situation. Because most of the time, people want to get back to where they were and they want to heal as quickly as possible. So if they need a break, most likely they need a break and they're not being lazy about it. That's just my 2 cents from my experience. But anyway, Owen is pissed. He says, "Don't hold back, Teddy, look at you." And he tells Teddy she is tiptoeing around the house pretending that everything is fine. Owen tells her to please stop, and he asks Teddy to look him in the eye. Teddy tells him to keep doing his therapy, and he yells, "It hurts." He explains he's holding back because he's in pain, and Teddy yells, "So am I." She tells Owen she can't look at him because she doesn't recognize him anymore. Nick is checking out a robot arm in the lab at Cleveland Clinic, and Meredith tells him it's precise and strong, so Nick shouldn't try to arm wrestle it. Meredith asks Nick what he would do with the money if he got some of her funding, and he says he'd keep studying regeneration stem cell therapies and he'd expand his research on xenotransplantation. Meredith asks Nick if he's doing that, and he says it takes time and funding, and not everyone gets surprised like her with millions of dollars in research funding. Meredith says she's grateful for it and she appreciates it, but she tells Nick he knows about her life in Seattle and about her kids in Seattle, and it seems like things have now gotten more complicated. Meredith says that he can meet her kids and she can have a life there with him. Meredith says Hamilton implied that this money could help Nick as well, and Nick asks if Meredith changed the subject, and she says no, she's assessing how complicated the situation is now. Nick asks Meredith if she thinks he's in a relationship with her to get grant funding, and she jokes that she told him that she had trust issues. Nick tells Meredith he didn't mention his research because it isn't relevant to how he feels about her. He tells her what they have is pretty great and he's all in, but that Meredith looks at things that are pretty great trying to find problems. Meredith asks Nick if he wants her to take the offer. Nick tells her he wants her to do what she wants to do. He tells Meredith it's her choice and it's her life, and as much as he'd like to share it with her, it's her decision, and he goes to check on a patient. Ivan is unstable, he's hemorrhaging from his liver, and Billy wants to pack him and get him to the ICU where they can stabilize him, and then they can try again to fix everything tomorrow. Lori and the baby are fine, but the fetus compressed her major vein, causing her heart to briefly stop, so they're going to need to reschedule the procedure. She's fine, she's sleeping, and Joe lets the brother know about this, and Joe says she can take him to go and see her, and Todd asks if most people peek at their person when they're sleeping, and she says she will let Todd know when Laura wakes up. She asks how far he has got in watching the show that they both love, and Todd got Joe some salt and vinegar chips from the vending machine that she told him about. And he tells Joe that they aren't weird Game of Thrones siblings. He just worries about Lori, and he knows she'll be a great mom. He wants her to feel less alone because she deserves more. I want to point out that old Greys used to bring patients to life, and they would take time to develop their stories and get viewers to connect with them. And I can feel that the show is trying to do that more, and they usually overlay some indie or emo type music. And they've been doing that a lot more lately, which brings a lot more color to the show and a lot more feeling and a lot more connection for the viewers. Joe asks Todd to go to the bar Joe's to get a drink, and he'd love a drink, so they will hit up Joe's after Joe's shift. Owen says for the past 20 years, Teddy has supported death with dignity. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Teddy who helped the wife with cancer do assisted suicide, but it was mandated by law, to my recollection. And the wife asked the husband, I remember the episode vaguely, to bring wine glasses and wine. I remember the episode, and I think Owen wasn't too on board with it, and he wasn't too happy with Teddy back then for helping this lady do assisted suicide. I could be mistaken, but I believe Teddy helped the patient lawfully, and Owen wasn't too happy with that decision, if I'm remembering that correctly. I don't remember the episode or the season, but I do remember that the patient was an actress on Roseanne as well. She played one of Roseanne's daughters, and the actress's name is Sarah Gilbert, and she did a really great job in that role on Grey's Anatomy, and that sticks out to me. Anyways, after Owen says Teddy has supported death with dignity for the past 20 years, she says Owen doesn't get to make this an argument. Teddy says she knows she supports it, and she's even helped patients pursue it, but this isn't about her. Owen made a choice that could put their family at risk without even consulting her. Owen says if something happened, he didn't want Teddy to be implicated in it. She asks, so you're fine with me raising our 2 kids alone? And Owen says he was careful. She says, careful? Was Heather Young careful? Referring to the patient's wife that Owen gave the stolen drugs to. She asks Owen if he even knows the soldiers Heather Young gave the drugs to or the families of those soldiers. Teddy asks, what if a devastated kid shows up at our door? She asks what happens if that kid goes to the military and tells them that his father ended his life with drugs that a doctor gave him illegally. Teddy asks, how do we know that that won't happen? And Owen says they don't know. Teddy says this will follow them for the rest of their careers and their lives, and she says Owen made that decision for her and for their kids. She says she thought they were a team in good times and bad. She asks Owen, isn't that the promise that we made? Owen says he was just trying to protect her. Teddy says she doesn't need protection. She has never needed protection. She needs her husband and the father of her kids to not go to prison, and she walks away. And Owen is sitting in his wheelchair telling her to wait, and she keeps going, and he stands and he hobbles, and he starts miraculously hobbling and walking to her. And he stops at a wall, and Teddy stops, and she tells Owen, oh my God, Owen, you walked. And he says, I walked, surprised. And Grace plays, of course, a vibey song over this miraculous moment. Meredith is brooding in her lab, and in walks Kai with a coffee for her. And Kai tells Meredith that Hamilton is a showman, so it's hard for him to understand people who don't respond positively to public accolades. But she understands, and she is sorry that Dr. Hamilton handled it the way he did, and she hopes Meredith doesn't let this scare her away. Meredith thanks Kai for the coffee, and she tells Kai that she's very kind and that it's really unnecessary for Kai to apologize for David Hamilton. Meredith asks Kai if she's seeing her sister Amelia, and Kai says yes, they're getting close, but that's not why she hopes Meredith takes the job. At least it's not the main reason why. Meredith tells Kai that Dr. Hamilton reminds her of her mother, Ellis Gray, and Kai asks because they work together, and Meredith answers because he's exactly like her mother. She says his wants, his needs, his demands, that personality is exhausting for anyone, but for her it's, and Kai says triggering, and Meredith says she doesn't like that word, but she asks Kai, how do you deal with him? And Kai says for her, Dr. Hamilton is the opposite of triggering. Dr. Hamilton knew Kai before she changed her name and her pronouns, and when Kai told Dr. Hamilton her new name, he patted her on the back and he called her brave, and he told her he was proud of her. He never dead-named her. He got on board with her pronouns when her parents continued to insist it was an impossible adjustment to make. She says David can be demanding and egotistical, but he respects people and talent, and not everyone does. Plus, he told Kai that they would change the world, and they just put a big dent in Parkinson's. Meredith says, we did do that, didn't we? And Kai says they did do it. So he has a pretty good track record of keeping his promises. Ivan starts coding on the way to the ICU in the hall, so they start compressions and they use the defib. Amelia sees Link in the hall, and she tells Link she can join to help Link fix Ivan's fracture. She says she isn't sure how they lived together that whole time without discovering their mutual fear of snakes. She's trying to make small talk and kind of extend an olive branch, and Link tells Amelia he can't do small talk with her. Amelia tells Link he always said he didn't want them to end up like his parents, that he didn't want that for their son Scout, and Amelia tells Link she doesn't want that for their son Scout either. She asks Link if they can decide to not hate each other. And Link tells Amelia he needs to hate her for just a little while, right or wrong, because when he doesn't hate her, he loves her, and they can't have that, because Amelia doesn't love him the way he loves her. So Amelia walks away, and Gray plays a vibey acoustic song. Ivan's partner is outside his ICU room, and he asks Bailey if Ivan will live, and Bailey tells him they're going to do everything they can. Bailey tells him he could get some rest, and she asks if he has a ride home. And he says the man he loves let his pet snake squeeze the life out of him, and he's not sure rest is going to help him get over that. He's standing there thinking he might need to reassess his entire life. And Bailey suggests maybe he should hold Ivan's hand for a minute, and it'll remind him of why he loves Ivan. Gigi the snake got sent to a rescue organization, and Dr. Wright joins Dr. Bailey watching Ivan with his partner through the glass. She says she isn't sure that she'd be as forgiving as Ivan's partner is. Dr. Wright tells Dr. Bailey that what she did today was an education on so many levels. She thanks him and tells him that she appreciates the vote of confidence, and she looks around to see who is around them, and she tells Dr. Wright before this grows into a larger problem, and Dr. Wright says it's not and it won't. He says he's very sorry for what he did for the kiss, and he says it was not appropriate, and Bailey agrees. She says no, it wasn't appropriate. Dr. Wright says Dr. Bailey sent him a signal, and she says no, she did not. And Dr. Wright says yes, she sure did. And he says he doesn't know. Maybe she didn't do it on purpose, or maybe she didn't think Dr. Wright would pick up on her signal because Dr. Bailey doesn't see herself that way, but he sees her that way. He sees her and he felt it, and he says all of this right in the middle of the ICU hallway. They're talking like this. Poor Ben. I have a feeling this is going to end terribly and something's going to happen, and I really hope it doesn't, but I kind of think it will. Dr. Wright says, but he's sorry, it won't happen again, and he tells Chief Bailey goodnight. Jo is waiting in the lobby for her patient's brother, Todd, to go to Jo's, and Link is coming down the steps, and he tells Jo she is exactly the person he wants to see right now. And Jo asks Link if everything is okay, and he says no, today was tough, and he asks Jo to go to Jo's with him before she picks up Luna. And Jo is about to tell Link that she's meeting Todd, but in walks Todd and he apologizes, telling Jo he told his sister that they were grabbing a drink together and she raved about Jo in a drug-induced haze for 10 minutes. And Link looks super bummed, like his heart just dropped in his chest, as Jo and Todd walk away to go to Jo's. He looks super bummed. Teddy tells Owen she's exhausted, and he tells her to go to sleep, that he'll probably just crash on the couch. And she says she means exhausted from this, from everything that's been going on. And she tells Owen she loves him. She's not going to leave him, but she needs to know that they come first. The kids, the two of them as a couple, their family, that all of that comes first. She tells Owen she understands why he did what he did. She understands Owen's principles. She understands Owen's heart. But she begs Owen, don't do something without talking to me. She tells Owen to trust her, that she will figure out how to support him. She wants Owen to trust her, that she will be there for him. She wants Owen to trust her, that she will talk him out of doing something stupid. But she implores him to please go to her in the future. He tells Teddy he loves her too. Billy comes home and Ben warns her to be quiet because Atticus is asleep finally. And she asks how many books it took tonight to get Atticus to sleep. Ben says just one, but Atticus made Ben read it to her 5 times. Ben asks Bailey how her day was, and she says a python tried to eat a person and herniated his abdominal organs into his chest. And Ben says that's dramatic, and he seems a little bit frustrated. Bailey asks, have we been ignoring a snake? Meaning a problem in their relationship. And Ben asks, what? Bailey says, well, we're sending mixed signals to other people. And Ben says, but Ingrid never kissed him. Ingrid is the woman that was into Ben and almost committed suicide on Thanksgiving when she was invited to the Station 19 Thanksgiving by Ben, who felt bad for her. Ingrid was on the show Station 19 for those viewers who don't watch that show. And she kept calling the firefighters over to her business, saying she smelled gas multiple times when there was no problem. And she seemed really lonely. So Ben invited her to the station for Thanksgiving, and she assumed that it was a date, and she kind of tried to hit on Ben, but then she found out that Ben was married. That's Ingrid, for those that are unaware. And I believe she tried to commit suicide at Station 19 during the Thanksgiving, if I'm remembering correctly. Bailey says a woman he rescued thought Ben was inviting her on a date to Thanksgiving dinner, and Ben says that's fair. Bailey says they have stressful jobs and they hardly see each other, and they adopted a teenager, and they are doing a custody battle, and Bailey is worried that they are feeding a life that might be squeezing their marriage to death, and she doesn't want to do that. Ben is too important to her for anyone to mistakenly think that either one of them are available. Ben takes Bailey's hands and he tells her, Miranda Bailey, I'm available to you and only you. He tells Bailey she's right. They haven't been spending as much time together and they've got to fix that. And he doesn't care how young and handsome her resident is. She'll never get rid of Ben. Richard is tired, sitting on the edge of his bed, and Catherine walks in telling him that she thought he was working late. Richard tells Catherine he made a bad call today, and if the resident implemented the call that he made about intubating the patient, it could have killed a man. Weber tells Catherine this morning, she said, not everyone belongs in an OR, and that he created a teaching method, and he pressured Catherine and Bailey to implement it. And it may have ended a very promising resident's career, and he might be bringing down the rest of this class too, so he can't do that in good conscience. And Catherine asks what Richard is suggesting, and he wants an assessment. He wants a physical exam, he wants a cognitive review, and a fine motor skills test. He wants it all. Meredith brings Nick home to meet Zola, Ellis, and Derek. Maggie heads to the gym because her husband got her a gym membership, and Nick and Meredith are chilling with the kids alone, getting to know each other. Weber says if his judgment is off, if he doesn't belong in the OR anymore, he wants to know about it. Meredith's voiceover says, when too much pressure builds inside your body, you might need a surgeon to relieve it, to drill burr holes or place chest tubes or to cut open limbs. In life, relieving pressure is not always as easy, but it's just as important. Too much stress takes a toll on our mental and physical health. So go for a walk, meet up with a friend, dance it out. Seek out moments of joy that keep us alive. And the episode ends with a view of Meredith, Nick, and the kids having pizza around the kitchen table. I like the episode, and next week should be very interesting. See you guys this weekend for Sister Wives Season 1, Episode 6, A Fourth Wife to Be, and on my other channel, 90 Day with Mary Jane K for the next episode of Before the 90 Days on Sunday. Thanks for listening. Bye.